Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, and I cannot thank you enough for joining us. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to be talking with Marshall Ferrari. He's going to tell us about the Gus Macker basketball tournament coming to Corning this weekend. We're going to learn all about that. And boy, do we have, needless to say, a lot to cover. What did you think of yesterday's day two of the Republican National Convention? Nikki Haley fully endorsing Trump, which I think kind of, I don't know, what's the word, legitimizes what I had been saying from the beginning, which is Nikki Haley supporters would ultimately support Donald Trump. I think the ones that weren't going to support Trump when Nikki Haley dropped out were never going to support Nikki Haley in the first place. But first, comments from last night. We got a lot of comments after the program. First of all, in regards to all the recent events, I feel we must take the high road, not burn cities like we witnessed BLM and Antifa do. Our number one priority is getting Trump elected, and then we will find out more truths. Thank you to that viewer. And by the way, to so many people texting yesterday with their waves. Oh, hey, we got a couple more waves. Texting with their waves, but then admitting they still did not have power from the storm, so they couldn't watch the show. But I still appreciate the commitment and the dedication to getting those waves in. Next, how about this comment? And I'll pose this question to everybody that is watching. This is from a viewer. Trump should put a gold circle earring in the bullet hole in his ear. I don't know how that would look. Did you see that? Oh, what's his name? I'm gonna forget his name. I have it here somewhere. Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. And full disclosure, I never really was a big Star Wars fan. I know that's a very unpopular thing to say. Mark Hamill, there it is. He decided that, I don't know if he's a doctor or what, that Trump wearing the bandage over his ear on the first day of the RNC. Well, I'll quote him exactly. Quote, first appearance of ludicrously oversized ear bandage. Apparently not needed prior to tonight. So I didn't know Mark Hamill was a doctor, number one. Number two, imagine seeing someone who had just survived an assassination attempt within centimeters of losing his life and then finding the need. This is how pathetic you've become with being full of hate because of politics, that you find the need to go online and, I guess you could call this ridicule the bandage being used on the ear. Many people commenting similar on social media saying, have you ever got shot, Mark? Then shut up. So a lot of cussing too. Republican strategist Matt Whitlock asked the question, so this is your life now? This is what you do? Radio host Anthony Cumia wrote, who would have imagined in 1977, as I left the theater absolutely amazed after seeing Star Wars, that 47 years later, the hero of that movie would turn out to be a tremendous, we'll say jerk. He did not say jerk. Hamill was also accused of galvanizing support for Trump, mocked with unflattering memes and images. Some asking the question, how big a bandage do you think is acceptable for getting shot in the head? But that was just a quick side tangent. Another comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. I think a discussion regarding the Electoral College would be an interesting one, in that how, for example, in New York State, my vote is not essentially counted, given that even if a candidate wins this state, all college votes go to the winner. This essentially eliminates my vote if I had voted for the loser. This is not a system that represents the popular vote. Hope this makes sense. It does make sense. It's a conversation that's been had for quite a while, but it's not supposed to represent the popular vote necessarily, because if you think that your vote wouldn't matter in the Electoral College, imagine if it went to the popular vote and then the focus of all elections would be New York City, Los Angeles, all the major cities. That's where all the ad dollars would go. That's where all the stump speeches would be, because that would be the deciding factor. It would take it and make the vote city. So you know how in New York State we complain how the city always controls everything that happens? That's what would happen at the nationwide level. And I'm more than happy to get an expert on if you'd like, but it isn't a popular vote. That's why the Electoral College is there to protect, smaller states, more rural voters. So yes, it can be frustrating when you live in a blue state that is controlled by the city. But just keep in mind that if it did go to essentially the popular vote, it would go the whole country, the whole election would be revolving around the major cities. As I mentioned, New York City, Chicago, LA. So that's why the Electoral College system was put in. But again, I'm more than happy to have an expert. But that is on the program. That is just my quick overall take on that. That the rural states, or the dreaded flyover states, as the media dislikes so much, they would be rendered with no power, essentially, in the presidential race. Okay, so Bob Menendez, gold bars, was convicted of all 16 charges. A jury in Manhattan deliberated for parts of 3 days before finding the Democrat guilty of 16 crimes, including bribery, extortion, honest services fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Now Schumer is calling, after all that, calling for his resignation. In light of this guilty verdict, Senator Menendez must now do what is right for his constituents, the Senate, and our country, and resign. Some saying that does not go far enough, and pressure is mounting for Schumer to expel Menendez. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, who would appoint Menendez as temporary replacement, called on the Senate on Tuesday to vote to expel Menendez if he doesn't resign immediately. A call that was echoed by Representative Mickey Sherrill. Isn't he running for re-election? No, he lost the primary, right? Is that what happened? So I don't have. Maybe he resigns. It could be breaking news. I could see it being forced to an expel scenario. Senators Jackie Rosen, Bob Casey also called for Menendez to resign or be expelled, as did Tammy Baldwin and John Tester, who said that they are prepared to vote to expel him. Wow, look at all these waves coming in. Thank you. And a lot of comments coming in as well. So day 2, I just wanted to get that done with quickly about Menendez, but I'm more than happy to talk more about it if you'd like. Comment from a viewer: I enjoyed day 2. Good hearing from regular people. There was some very good speeches yesterday. It was interesting to see the full endorsement by Nikki Haley. DeSantis did a good job. We're going to talk about some of the other speakers. We also have a lot about the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. And we have a few things here about the race and how the races for president is shaping up in general. Before that, I want to mention this. So we've talked about extensively the indoctrination on college campuses, which led to the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel protests. This is not in relationship to that, but I think it proves our point, and it shows a larger picture. We've talked about the lack of education and more of the indoctrination, political indoctrination of these young people, and that it does not just start on college campuses, that it started well before. A new survey shows that college students know just about nothing when it comes to this country. This coming from Ricky Schlott at the New York Post. When asked about the nation's history, its leaders, and our governmental structure, American college students categorically failed on all fronts, according to this new survey. Universities might be churning out the next generation of progressive activists, as we see from these anti-Israel protests. But when it comes to basic civics, they're essentially illiterate. The survey, called Losing America's Memory, polled more than 3,000 undergraduates, and it was conducted by the American Council of Trustees and Alumni back in May and June. Maybe at that time to see, wait a minute, all these college campuses, all these kids know what America should do or shouldn't do, lecturing America, not just on involvement with Israel and having Israel as an ally, but lecturing our whole system of governance. When it comes to America's history, sit down, relax. I'm going to tell you some of these. Students had massive gaps in their knowledge. Just 31% of those surveyed could identify James Madison as the father of the Constitution, and only 28% knew that the 13th Amendment freed slaves. As Ricky Schlott says, they may be college educated, but they sure are ignorant. Now, how the government functions is a major blind spot, too. 60% of students failed to identify the length of congressional terms. 60% did not know how long a congressional term lasts. Less than a third, 32%, knew that an impeachment trial takes place before the Senate. And keep in mind, that's in spite of the fact that they lived through 2 recent presidential impeachment trials. And then when it comes down to who's in charge, remember, they're lecturing us about our involvement with Israel, but also just about our system of governance in general. 27% could identify Kamala Harris as the president of the Senate. 28% incorrectly said Joe Biden, by the way. Just 37% of these college students knew John Roberts is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and a mere 35% knew Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. And I know reading numbers gets a little wonky, but I thought it was worth mentioning because you can see these numbers are dismal. The ACTA calls the results alarming and reveals a dangerous level of civic illiteracy that should concern all Americans. Now, again, as the piece says here, college students might be proficient in gender ideology and critical race theory, but they are flunking the most important topic of all, responsible citizenship. And this goes back to the early days of Frankly Speaking, when we first came on TV, when we talked about the lack of community, lack of involvement in religious organizations and charitable organizations. Well, this all ties in with these numbers that we're talking about today. According to the nation's report card, just 22% of American 8th graders are proficient in civics. And worse yet, just 13 are proficient in basic level of U.S. history. That's as young as 8th grade. So as to our point, it does not just start at the college level. So why did I start off with that? To bum you out? Because it's important to highlight and recognize what exactly we're dealing with. Because remember, changing from the 8th graders, but going to the college students that they interviewed, those young people can vote when they're not even informed on who or why they're voting. They should be more informed and engaged than ever, says Schlott. History is being written before their eyes. Their votes could determine the future of their nation. How in the world, then, are they so woefully uninformed? Students in higher education are supposed to be the most educated of our populace. If even our degree-holding citizens are failing on such a fundamental level, our future is dim. We should be demanding better of our colleges and universities. It's time to overhaul their priorities. Civic literacy should be the absolute minimum requirement of a college education. Instead, it's a massive blind spot. So on that note, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the RNC. Love to hear your take on it. Did you have a favorite yesterday? Have you had a favorite moment so far? Has anything stuck out to you? I would love to hear from you. So stay with us. Break number 1, we're just getting started. And as you can tell, we're hitting the ground running. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you so much for joining us. I got a comment here regarding the implementation of the Electoral College. I thought it was implemented in the old days. Yeah, Constitution. Yep. When there was no reliable means of suitably representing a state's population. Well, again, this before the internet, i.e. Yes, it goes to break up. How do I want to word it? It's so that, again, the major populations, the cities, do not have full say. It makes, well, and that's why swing states are so important. And some would argue that's one of the downsides to it. That certain states maybe, in certain instances, have more power. But if not, if you were to run for president under the popular vote, you would be focused on New York City, LA, Chicago, smaller states, even smaller cities. would not have any type of say in it. It would all go down to the heavy urban areas. So that's one of the reasons why it was implemented in the Constitution. There was going to be, if I understand my history correctly, it was kind of a compromise that it wasn't going to be a vote from Congress, which was originally discussed. This is what I understand. And just the popular vote. So it was kind of to meet in the middle, so all states had a say. All right, let's talk about the RNC, though. CNN put together the takeaways. Boy, there's so much disdain for Nikki Haley right now. This goes back to what I had said, that if Nikki Haley would have got the nomination, don't think from it, because they said she could be the unifying candidate. It wouldn't be any more of this chaos. They would turn on her so quickly. And they're doing such as she fully endorsed the president. Haley gets on board, CNN says. You don't have to agree with Donald Trump 100% of the time to vote for him, Haley said. Take it from me. In the 2024 primary, Haley consistently scored above 20% among GOP voters and won 2 contests, underscoring Trump's lingering issues with moderate suburban Republicans. On Tuesday, Haley said she was speaking to them, the fence sitters. For the sake of our nation, we have to go with Donald Trump, she said. I'm here tonight because we have a country to save. And then, again, the disdain here. Listen to this disdain. Another takeaway from CNN, the other ring kissers. It was not only Haley who used the occasion to ask for a kind of forgiveness from Trump and the Republican base. Other one-time rivals, such as DeSantis, whose primary campaign fizzled out shortly after voting began, also kissed Trump's ring. Would that be worded, I just ask you, no matter who you support, if the shoe was on the other foot, would they be wording it that way if it was Biden? Just out of curiosity, your thoughts. Christie and the Unity Brigade versus RNC speakers. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie long ago evolved from a top Trump ally to one of the former president's most vocal Republican critics. And I guess yesterday he dropped a bombshell, they said here, op-ed in the New York Times, calling Trump's early attempts to rein in some of the worst rhetorical impulses in their party less than promising. Quote, it's not enough for this to be only a momentary call for unity. This change has to go beyond this week, next month, and the November elections to be a real transformational shift. Otherwise, all we are left is with another fleeing political moment. How was that a takeaway from the RNC? And who's really, chomping at the bit to hear what Chris Christie has to say? I mean, I'm not even trying to knock Chris Christie or go out of my way to be necessarily nasty towards him. I just don't think, no matter how many times they tell us, I just don't think Chris Christie's the game changer the media wants him to be. Yes, the media loved him when he was running because he was the Trump basher. So they could get him on TV, have him interview, badmouth Trump, got everything they wanted out of him. Some in the political world would call that maybe a useful idiot type of idea. So no one's clamoring for this op-ed for Chris Christie. But according to CNN, that's one of the big takeaways of the night. Another, down-ballot candidates and leaders make their cases. Several Republican candidates in key House and Senate races made their own cases with a range of approaches, from Lake's combative words to Pennsylvania Senate contender Dave McCormick's call for unity. House Republican Majority Leader Steve Scalise, in a battle to keep his party's narrow majority, used 6 words over and over to make his point. Quote, President Trump and the Republican majority. None of what he said after, Scalise implied, would matter if the first 2 parts weren't secured. And finally, family programming. Laura Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law and co-chair of the National Party, closed out the festivities with a tribute to the nominee and the makings of an olive branch to Trump-curious Democrats and independents. She said, quote, you didn't have to love everything he tweeted, but you cannot deny you were better off when Donald Trump was in office. We may talk a little bit more about what she had to say, but I'd love to hear your thoughts if you were watching last night. I do think, and I have to take another break, and I apologize, but I do want to talk a little bit about what Laura Trump had to say. I think Rachel Morin's brother, did a great job torching Joe Biden, if you will. We've got a little bit more. I don't know. If you want to keep talking about Nikki Haley and her full endorsement, we can. And the same with DeSantis. I am going to show you how the media is framing it. But I do want to, on today's program, also talk about quite a bit about the presidential campaigns, about Biden, the push to nominate him ahead of time so that they can kind of stop this rebellion, this chaos. Before that, if I could just quickly make one quick announcement before I take a break. If you are a business, or maybe you work at a business or company and would like to help the Salvation Army, let's be blunt about it. The Salvation Army of Corning, it was a very, very tough year for the bell ringing, and came up well short. And of course, that means certain things have to be adjusted and changed at the Salvation Army. So there's going to be some fundraising here in July. And so they're asking businesses, or if you work at a company that would like to take part in this, to have a tabletop kettle, just one at someone's desk. They're not very big. If you would like to participate in that for the week of July 22nd to the 27th, have a little friendly competition, maybe with someone at your office, friendly competition with a local business, however you want to look at it, just to help fundraise. You can call the Salvation Army of Corning to get that tabletop, and they will deliver it. And again, don't think of it as competition, but the event takes place, the Christmas in July campaign takes place the 22nd through the 27th. And then they'll count it all up at the end and see who was victorious. But at the end of the day, it's all about helping the amazing folks at the Salvation Army of Corning. So here's the phone number, 607-216-4099. Tell them that you want to take part in the Christmas in July fundraiser, 607-216-4099. Would be greatly, greatly appreciated. All right, we got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. And we are back. Sorry, I didn't have time to put the music on. I wanted to mention the speech by Rachel Morin's brother. Rachel Morin, the mother of 5, who was murdered last year, allegedly by an illegal alien MS-13 gang member. During his speech, he said the monster arrested for killing Rachel entered the U.S. unlawfully after killing a woman in El Salvador. Joe Biden and his designated border czar, Kamala Harris, opened our borders to him and others like him, empowering them to victimize the innocents. I got cut off here. The innocent. Yet to this day, we have not heard from Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. They never apologized. In contrast, he said that Trump immediately reached out to his family and offered his sincerest condolences. When Rachel was killed, President Trump called my family to offer his condolences. He wanted to meet with us. He cared. That is leadership, and we need real leadership back in the White House. I thought that was a very moving speech. Open borders are often portrayed as compassionate and virtuous, but there is nothing compassionate about allowing violent criminals into our country and robbing children of their mother. My sister's death was preventable. What a moving speech. I thought Laura Trump did a very good job as well. Oh, we had some comments. I'm sorry. I apologize. I jumped right in. I wanted to get right back to it, but the most important part are your comments. Here's from a viewer. Regarding the convention, I thought the speakers were so convincing that I could have believed Mr. Trump had already won the election. I hope this will prove to be true. MAGA. Thank you very much from that viewer. Another viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders was remarkable and Ron DeSantis very strong last night. Was there ever a time where you thought maybe Sarah Huckabee Sanders would get the VP nod? Remember, there was kind of some whispers of that early on, and she did such a great job in Trump's administration that it kind of piqued my interest, but obviously that went nowhere. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders was remarkable and Ron DeSantis very strong last night. Dr. Ben Carson still holds a special place in my heart. It was my first choice in 2017 with his mild manner, sensible, and gracious demeanor. But it became clear to me early that Trump was what was needed in the nasty climate in times we are living in presently. Yes, Dr. Carson, I went to see him give a speech in Ithaca, of all places. You know, I think it was a little before 2016, a little before the race had begun. And he's such a great guy. And I can totally understand why he would have been your first choice. But I also agree with what you're saying. At that time, to defeat Hillary Clinton, back in 2016. It couldn't have been a Dr. Carson. It couldn't even have been a Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is someone who is very smart. He was president of the debate team at Harvard, very good at what he does, but still, at the end of the day, he was going to do things in a political manner. And what we learned was that is not what was needed to defeat Hillary Clinton. But I'll continue with other comments here as they come in. I thought I had another one. Nikki Haley offers her strong endorsement of Trump in the convention speech. So this is where this all took for the media to start to turn on her. So again, that proves the point that I had made early on, that it does not matter what the media says, that she could end the chaos. She's the candidate Republicans need. If she would have got the nomination, if this week she would have got the nomination, they would have turned on her as well, because it's just like what they're doing with J.D. Vance. Not that they ever liked J.D. Vance. Well, they did when he wasn't a big Trump supporter. But just to show you, first of all, that the rhetoric is not being tamped down, even after this assassination attempt. They're already saying that, the Biden campaign that is, that J.D. Vance may be more extreme than even Trump. And they said that about DeSantis when he had a little momentum there. They're so predictable, the media and the campaign, that it's laughable. So as soon as Nikki Haley offers her strong endorsement, that's all it took for her to have the media turn on her. We're going to get to that in just a moment. DeSantis also took the stage, and these are considered two, not opponents, but they were primary opponents of Trump. DeSantis declared it time to send Joe Biden back to his basement. My fellow Republicans, let's send Joe Biden back to his basement, and let's send Donald Trump back to the White House. Life was more affordable when Donald Trump was president. Our border was safer under the Trump administration, and our country was respected when Donald Trump was our commander-in-chief. Joe Biden has failed this nation. As a veteran, I was appalled when 13 of our service members were killed in Afghanistan due to Joe Biden's dereliction of duty. As a citizen, as a husband, and as a father, I'm alarmed that the current president of the United States lacks the capability to discharge the duties of his office. DeSantis insisted that Americans need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. That we cannot afford 4 more years of a weekend at Bernie's presidency. Now, Haley did originally, when that was DeSantis. Now we jump back to Nikki Haley. Haley took the stage to a mixture of cheers and boos. Some saying the old guard Republicans who were still there, a part of the convention, were the ones that were still cheering her on. And then you have kind of the new MAGA, if you will, Republicans booing her. Haley tried to send a message of unity, acknowledging that not everyone has to agree with Trump 100%, as I mentioned. But here we go. Here's how the media covered both, and the reason why I divided those up, how they covered Haley and DeSantis' speech. According to The Express, Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis make huge U-turns with fawning speeches for Donald Trump. So it's fawning, it's kissing the ring, as CNN said. I got another one from CNN that I think you'll find even more interesting. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that when we come back from break. I'll move on to the CNN piece. And then if you want to know more about this Chris Christie op-ed, I just don't understand why anybody cares. I don't know why CNN made such a big deal over that. But again, I have it here if you're interested. But we're going to talk more about the convention. I'd love to hear your take on it. I also have a story that I know is going to get some reaction. I've put it off, but I will be bringing that up in just a little bit. But I know we're going to have strong reaction. And keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. I'd want to hear exactly what you thought. Who are your standouts thus far as 2 days are down with the Republican National Convention? Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. And we are back. Broadcasting live from the House of Studio, coming up a little bit later on. Here at the Student Senior Services Sunset Program. Also, guess who's going to be joining us on tomorrow's broadcast? Our good friend Sylvia. Remember Sylvia from the International Exchange Program? Lisa are going to be in just to give us an update on how things are in Italy, how she's made it as she left the States and returned home. So we'll have a fun interview with her on tomorrow's show. Okay, here we go. Here's how CNN and Stephen Collinson puts it. Trump's former rivals bury their criticism to celebrate all-powerful GOP leader. Trying to word it almost as in a dictatorial way, as a dictator would put it, all-powerful. Once the leader was on his throne, the ritual capitulation could begin. Donald Trump looked on with a gaze Tuesday as a parade of Republican presidential candidates whose dreams he crushed staged a parade of the vanquished at the Republican National Convention. On another night, awash in emotion after Trump escaped an assassination attempt just days before, speakers joined a choreographed attempt to soften his hard man image, portraying him as a caring and even benevolent leader, boss and grandfather, while smoothing the rougher edges of his populist and authoritarian worldview. So what Stephen Collinson is saying here, and you don't even have to read between the lines, is Trump's a dictator. He's an authoritarian. They have accepted his quote-unquote threat to democracy, being a threat to democracy, as fact. Which, speaking of that, I know the party keeps telling us about a threat to democracy. Did you see that it is being alleged, it is anonymous sources, I believe, saying that Biden is going to attempt to change the Supreme Court, something that has been kind of threatened for a while, though he has stood strong until election season. We'll tell you about that a little bit later on. That's why I know it was a great day at the RNC, but that's why we can't continue to focus so much on it because we have so much to get to. But I'll continue. The message on night 2 in Milwaukee was double-edged and impossible to miss. This is indisputably and irrevocably Trump's party now, and the GOP is united in pursuit of victory. So you can see the disdain in these pieces for Nikki Haley because she wasn't supposed to support Trump. That's why they wanted her so bad. The poetry of Trump's red-hatted followers. Everything's done in a mocking term or a shadowing of a dictatorship term. A mix of hero worship and personal ambition. Yes, many believe that a Nikki Haley or DeSantis, they don't really like Trump, but they've got to worry about their future in the Republican Party. In bowing before Trump, his supplicants look to a distant future. In bowing, the only possible path to power in the future lies in homage to Trump now. The hate for the Republicans at the convention. But as I mentioned, the Biden campaign suggesting that now J.D. Vance might be even more extreme than Trump. Keep in mind, any candidate in the future, whether Nikki Haley would have won the nomination, if she would have, the next day you would have heard that Nikki Haley might be even more extreme than Trump. Now, it didn't matter who he was going to pick for his VP. They were going to be considered maybe even more extreme than Trump. So again, not trying to tamp down that rhetoric, not trying to calm the anger. Vance is just a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. I think it's important that American voters take a step back and ask themselves why Donald Trump had to pick a new vice presidential nominee. It is because his first one would not certify the results of a legitimate election, and J.D. Vance has said that he would do as much. They only know one language, and that's MAGA extremism. Remember, this is coming after the promise to unify us as a country. The hatred for what they consider MAGA, meaning Trump voters, and who they consider, if you are a Trump voter, you are an extremist. But I'll continue. This is specifically with, just so I can give credit where credit's due, Biden-Harris campaign principal deputy manager Quentin Fulks. He said it is both of them doubling down. He will continue to do just as Donald Trump said. He is not in the business of correcting Trump or moderating Trump on any of these issues. In fact, he might be even more extreme when talking about abortion in cases of rape and incest. For women to get those types of treatments after those incidents, he said 2 wrongs don't make a right. He has doubled down on some of the most out-of-touch policy stances. So remember, again, they were going to try to calm the nation. And when you have the rhetoric from the media and from the Biden campaign that now Vance is more extreme, of all the MAGA extremists, It's predictable, but it's also troubling. And don't think for a moment that if Nikki Haley would have got the nomination, I don't care who, DeSantis, anybody got the nomination, Chris Christie, for heaven's sakes, they would have called them even more extreme than Trump. No matter who Trump picked as the VP, they would have said the same thing, that they may be even more extreme than Trump. But speaking of J.D. Vance, this is really interesting. I think this may make some viewers out there in our audience very excited. Representative Jim Banks has an idea of who should replace Senator J.D. Vance if he and former President Trump win the election, because, of course, Vance is a senator from Ohio. He would need to be replaced if he wins vice president. Jim Banks believes the replacement, Ramaswamy, Vivek Ramaswamy. I hope Vivek is Governor DeWine's choice. I mean, he'd be a great senator if he wants it, Banks said. Though he is not associated with Ohio politics, we should keep that in mind. I know a lot of people on this show that were commenting, viewers that were commenting, wanted to see a Ramaswamy get the vice presidential nomination. What are your thoughts, having maybe a day to sleep on it? Because we didn't talk too much about it. I think there's a lot of unknowns about Vance at first to many people. So I would ask, now that you've had a couple days or a day to sleep on it, what are your thoughts about the pick? Are you happy with the pick? Was there someone else you'd like to see? Let me know, because I want to keep those comments coming in. No, let's take a short break. We got some more media coverage of this. Then we are going to, of the RNC, we are going to get to the campaign. I do want to talk about this with Biden now announcing his support for major Supreme, or is going to, not now. Biden is going to announce his support for major Supreme Court reforms. Well, he's already ignored the Supreme Court when it came to college loan forgiveness, so this should maybe come as no surprise. But as they change and alter our institutions, remember that this, again, is a party that lectures Republicans about being a threat to democracy and the MAGA extremism. Just keep that in mind. We got to take a short break. Keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. We got a good amount of waves this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be right back after this. Sorry the music ran a little long last time. I got to get to the bottom of why that happens sometimes and other times it doesn't. We are back with Frankly Speaking. Here's a comment from a viewer. We agree that Vivek should replace Senator Vance. It would be an even swap out. That's a good point. It'll be interesting to see if anything comes from that, though. As I had mentioned, I don't believe Ramaswamy is known for any kind of Ohio political connection. I could be wrong. So does it say Well, anyway, we'll find out more about that. So John King from CNN said that Donald Trump is in command. New numbers out today. More bad news for the president. Let's look through it. And let's start with this back in 2020 when Joe Biden won a pretty convincing win, 306 to 232. And they show the map and all that. But Donald Trump would win the election. But the map is even more favorable to Donald Trump. If you look through this new polling today, it's a small lead, but Donald Trump is leading in Pennsylvania right now, Wisconsin right now, Arizona right now, and most believe right now has a lead in Nebraska as well. Nebraska, like Maine, rewards electoral votes by congressional district. So look at the map right now. That gets Donald Trump to 303, and there's new polling today that shows the president's approval rating in these battleground states is below 40. The president's ballot number right now is below 40 in most of those states, and it's a 42 in Nevada. I'll continue here. I don't want to read all the numbers. But the president's standing, his approval ratings, his ballot number, people views about how old he is, and people who view the state of the economy are very bad for the president right now. And so even if you just go back to where we started, Donald Trump is in command. The numbers are getting worse for the president. Now, Michael Goodwin, referencing the RNC, and then we're going to get into the Biden campaign. We do have a few things here about the assassination attempt. But Michael Goodwin says Donald Trump and the GOP are shifting to a party for the working class. And I think it's been that way. I think back in 2016, that's one of the reasons why Trump ultimately succeeded, showing the, as he put it, forgotten men and women of this country, that he was for them, as compared to Hillary, who was having rallies with not even well-attended rallies, but with celebrities and Hollywood elites, just like Joe Biden is currently doing, which many are saying is a mistake to show at a time when so many people are suffering under this economy, can't afford their bills, can't afford groceries, can't afford gas, that he's holding, what was it, $25 million fundraiser with Hollywood celebrities, one of which, if you recall, was Jack Black, who I do want to give you an update from yesterday's show. He has suspended his tour with him and his buddy that they call Tenacious D, because his friend who's in the band with him suggested for his birthday wish was that next time you don't miss Trump. So they've suspended that tour. But those are, the Hollywood elites. That, who was it that said when George Clooney came out with that op-ed asking Biden to step down, that he makes sure to make his vote based 100% on what George Clooney believes. But I'll continue. I don't want to get on a tangent here. Let's play a game, Michael Goodwin said. Let's entertain the thought that the Republican Party should get a new name that reflects the new future Donald Trump envisions for it. In that case, the GOP would become the Workers' Party. Not, of course, in the socialist sense, for Trump remains the ultimate capitalist. Rather, the new party emerging before our eyes at the Milwaukee Convention is one whose number one focus is the well-being of working-class Americans. They are the forgotten people who elected Trump in 2016, and as he aims for the White House again, he is making it absolutely clear that they are the core constituency driving his agenda. Farewell to the Chamber of Commerce, and good riddance to Mitt Romney. Hello, restaurant workers, no taxes on tips, Trump pledged. And get this, even big unions could be invited to the party. The change inevitably will lead to a much more diverse Republican Party, as demonstrated by the numerous non-white speakers Monday. The lineup wasn't a hint that Trump is chasing a progressive-like DEI agenda, as some of his supporters complained on social media. The clear justification came with the most controversial of those speakers, model and rapper Amber Rose. She hit it out of the park with her personal story of how she found, quote, my people in the GOP. As Van Jones said, her remarks were a bunker buster and dangerous for Democrats because her experience strikes at the heart of the less view that Trump and all Republicans are racist. And there's a really good article that we probably won't have an opportunity to get to, but I think it was by Kristen Fleming that said, because I know there was some pushback on Amber Rose giving the speech, but Kristen Fleming said, here's why it was important to have Amber Rose speak at the RNC, and it's a very good piece if you have the opportunity, but I'll continue. In fact, a more diverse GOP is a natural outgrowth of a heightened focus on workers, because the working and middle classes obviously comprise many black, Latino, and Asian workers, as well as whites. And most of them have seen their families' finances decline under Joe Biden. More evidence that Trump is rebranding the party came with the fact that Monday's keynote speech was delivered by Teamsters Union President Sean O'Brien. His mere appearance at the podium was a shock to the old system. Never mind his fiery challenge to the traditional GOP establishment of big business and union-free shops. Many delegates were stunned into silence by O'Brien's message, uncertain whether to cheer or boo. They were probably wondering if he had stumbled into the wrong convention. Trump, who loves to stir the pot, seemed subdued following the assassination attempt, but appeared to welcome O'Brien's forceful pitch that big companies such as Amazon and Walmart are wildly successful, largely because many of their workers are underpaid. Besides, there's zero chance O'Brien just happened to stumble in to that primetime slot by accident. He was there because Trump wanted him and wanted delegates at a TV audience to hear his views. It's worth recalling that Trump generally had good relations with tradesmen before he started running for president, And I don't want to keep going through this because I'm going to run long. But two other observations are relevant. And this is after day one, early day two of the convention. First, Trump's remake of the GOP is possible only because the party is here to a degree that few politicians of any stripe ever achieve. As he told me recently, about 90% of the party is MAGA, a far cry from his first term, where he was often thwarted by congressional Republicans, people like Paul Ryan. Ed Rollins, the architect of Ronald Reagan's '84 landslide victory, says he had never seen anyone with so much control over the party, and that includes Reagan himself. There were factions even there. Despite Reagan's success, the Bush people were always around looking to do things their way. Trump's selection of Vance as his running mate should be seen as part of this control and the new focus. Michael Goodwin also goes on to talk about the Democrats in disarray. But naturally, there are potential pitfalls. The nation's exploding debt must be curbed, and excessive protectionism will stymie the very growth that could lift all boats. Also, America First policies, if carried to extremes, could give our adversaries a free hand to menace us and our allies around the globe. The challenge, then, is find the right balance. Trump and Vance surely know that, but first they have to win the election. That's Michael Goodwin. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back, wrapping things up in this hour, frankly speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A couple comments from viewers as we wrap up this hour. Amazing how Democrats magnify an opposing candidate as being extreme, but will minimize the extreme idiocy of their choice. Thank you very much. Another comment. Frank, we should designate July as Distraught Leftist Awareness Month. They have to watch a unified Republican Party embracing a leader that resembles a cross between Braveheart and the Patriot, while they're left with a leader who yells, trying to sound powerful. If you see flags with teardrops flying, try not to smile. Thank you very much for these comments. Keep them coming in. Hour number one nearly through. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk about Biden and announcing those, potentially announcing those changes to the Supreme Court. I also have a piece I kind of hinted towards it earlier on in the program that I think you are going to find very interesting. I know very often on this program, I talk about the media, and maybe some people may think I emphasize the power of the media too much. I go too far with my always questioning the media. I don't think so, and I think this is going to prove what we've been saying for so long. We also have quite a few things here about the campaign, and we're going to be talking to Marshall Ferrari about the Gus Macker tournament coming to Corning this weekend. And as I mentioned on tomorrow's program, we are going to have Sylvia and Elisa in. Sylvia's going to give us an update now that she has returned home. You recall last summer we had her on, or last school year we had her a couple times as she was a part of that ASSE.com, which is the International Exchange Student Program. And we're going to, and I know many people grew fond of hearing her stories here in the States and what it would be like to go back home. So I thought I'd get you an update in person in the studio. A lot of comments coming in. Keep them coming in. And we're going to take a quick break and put hour number one in the books. And hour number two coming up in just mere moments. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. Hour number two of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and we've received so many great comments. Thank you so much. I'm going to get to a couple of those. A little bit of housekeeping here. If you are just joining us, Marshall Ferrari will be our guest in a few moments to talk about the Gus Macker tournament here in Corning. Okay, comments from viewers. I'm expecting anyone would change at a DNA level after such a close call with death. I'm looking forward to a new presidential form of Trump, worthy of history books, at a level of Reagan. I've had a lot of people comment to me somewhat similar to what you're saying, and I'll ask you the question. Have you noticed a little bit of a change in demeanor? I would argue it was before the assassination attempt, but I think there's also a point to be made with his visit to the RNC and how he's been handling himself. I could see the argument that it happened after Saturday, but I think it started back almost during the debate. You could almost watch it in live real time. When we talked about, I believe we talked about this with former Congressman Joe Semplinsky, where the idea is he's become, after his time in Washington, more honed politically in a good way, not politics, the bad side of politics, meaning the old Trump, I believe, during that debate would have went after Biden. But I think Trump recognized instantly, like we all did, there is a serious problem with Biden's mental health. And Trump, instead of attacking him and getting the empathy to go towards Biden and have people say, oh, how could he attack Grandpa and all that, he sat back and watched it crumble. He was very disciplined, very reserved, and he has been since then. If you look at the coverage, the tweets, nothing like the old Trump. I think he's seeing, hey, let the Democrats deal with this. Let the American people see the chaos. So I think it kind of started there. And to your point, I think Saturday is only going to have sped it up, the more presidential, in a good way. I don't want it to sound negative. Presidential kind of demeanor from the president, from the former president. Another comment from a viewer. I'm happy with Trump's partial reasoning behind picking Vance. He said he's confident that Vance could do the job if something happened to him, unlike Harris. More proof Trump is looking ahead and looking out for we the people. Thank you so much. Question on that, and I know we posed this question yesterday. Do you think that Vance ended up getting the nod because of what happened on Saturday? Meaning that a couple things. Trump said, you know what? I'm doing it my way. I'm not going to do the people tell me I have to pick this moderate or whatever. I'm doing it my way. It was too close of a call. Or, and maybe it's part two of that, is it also because, yes, he had a close scare? Does he also say, then I need someone that can replace me, and if I don't pick the right person to carry on this agenda, God forbid something happens, then what happens? So I think those are all good points. So Biden has announced, is going to announce, I keep saying is going to announce support for major changes to the Supreme Court. President Biden is reportedly planning to endorse major changes to the United States Supreme Court, including proposals for legislation to establish term limits for the justices and an enforceable ethics code. Quote, I'm going to need your help on the Supreme Court because I'm about to come out. I don't want to prematurely announce it, but I'm about to come out with a major initiative on limiting the courts. I've been working with constitutional scholars for the last 3 months, and I need some help. That was a transcript of a call obtained by the Washington Post. Isn't it interesting how when it was very likely that most decisions would go more towards the left and the Democratic Party very often used the courts to get unpopular laws through? Isn't it interesting now their exact opposite, and now their hatred for the courts, and because it no longer is kind of a stacked deck in their favor, now it's time to limit it. Now it's time to go after it. Many of the changes would need congressional approval. The Post also reported that Biden was weighing whether to call for a constitutional amendment to eliminate broad immunity for presidents and other constitutional office holders. Because a lot of this needs congressional approval, they don't believe it'll get done. But what they're saying is that's a campaign talking point that Biden can run on against Trump, saying, give me 4 more years and I'm going to go after the Supreme Court in unprecedented ways. So that was just a quick outlet. I've got a quick update that I've been highlighting all morning. So many comments, so many waves coming in. Thank you. All right, how do I want to handle this? Because I want to bring this up, and I don't want to go out of order. I kind of had an order to things on the show, but I have to mention this early on in the program because or the second hour, I really want to hear your opinion on it. I talk so often about the media and really how I think the media has divided us in ways that are just tragic. I think the media plays off that. I think we daily see, as in a way that they're saying is not biased, but we see that daily, the bias against Trump and his supporters, the hatred for Trump and his supporters. That's why so many people were angry at the media after the assassination attempt, because of some of the words that they use and some of the rhetoric they push. This is to show you how the media tries to stack the deck. Do you remember the media, of course, covering up the Hunter Biden laptop, lying about the Hunter Biden laptop because it was right during the presidential, the last presidential go-around, that it was right before the vote? How about this? An unnamed photo editor at a major news outlet, this coming from Fox News, believes it is, quote, dangerous for the media to highlight the historic photo of former President Trump standing tall after the assassination attempt, calling it, quote, free PR for the Trump campaign. An Axios media trend assessment on Tuesday, Axios, no friend to Republicans, argued that the overuse of the iconic image can pose risks, citing unnamed photographers who reportedly told the outlet that promoting the viral photos could be a form of photoganda, because the Trump campaign will use them to further their agenda, despite the photographer's intent of capturing a news event. They don't want you to see that picture. And you know why they don't want you to see that picture, because it's the reaction you got when you first saw it. It's the reaction that many people who maybe were on the fence, maybe don't even like Trump, their reaction when they saw it. So they're saying, basically, Don't make like this don't make this like 2016 in the rallies, that you kept showing his rallies because you thought it was a joke and you thought people were laughing at Trump, and in fact he was speaking to the forgotten men and women. Don't make that mistake again. So do not show. Bury the iconic photo. Do not use it in the run-up to November, because it will be, quote, photoganda. It poses risks. That risk, getting Trump reelected. That is a existential risk to them. Now, you've seen the photo. I don't have to describe it to you. Axios cited a photo editor and photographer, quote, from a major news outlet, end quote, who suggested the media refrain from using the photo, despite how good it is, that's an exact quote, to avoid casting the former president in a positive light. This is very similar to what we've heard from the New York Times, which is they don't have to be fair. That's how bad Trump is. They do not need to show any kind of neutrality. They have to go after and destroy Trump through all means. It does not matter. And that's the same side of the coin here, which is don't show that photo because it's effective. Don't show that photo because it could help Trump, and that's a risk. The amount that publications have been using Evans's photo is kind of free PR for Trump in a way. And it's dangerous for media organizations to keep sharing the photo despite how good it is, the editor told the outlet. Does this not speak volumes about what we're dealing with when we talk about the media? The photo has been praised as both iconic and instantly historic and will be on the next print cover of Time magazine. Some observers have said it could change some people's perceptions forever of Trump. One of the most controversial, beloved, and loathed political figures in American history. The Washington Post's art critic, Philip Kennicott, called it a photograph that could change America forever. Psychotherapist Jonathan Alter feels the image encapsulates the essence of what America wants from its leaders. You can't have that. You can't show that photo if that's the case. The image and the preceding event perfectly capture the raw vulnerability of a powerful former leader at his most vulnerable moment likely ever in his life, only to be followed by that of perseverance, strength, and defiance in the face of evil, Alter said. The image very well encapsulates the essence of what most Americans have come to admire in our heroes, both in fiction and in real life, and those we look towards to lead, emerging from chaos with resilience and authority and unwavering toughness. Frankly, this photo might change the narrative on toxic masculinity. That's a good point too. So let's make sure that we bury this. We have they have to make sure that this photo is not continually seen by the American voter, because it's PR for the Trump campaign. So even though he survived and came out looking heroic, that cannot, as if people haven't seen it already, but they've got to make sure that it is now until November kept to a bare minimum. That is what we're dealing with the media, folks. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking coming up in just a little bit. Marshall Ferrari talking about Gus Macker. So we'll be right back after this. Thank you for joining us this morning on Frankly Speaking. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I hope everybody has power. If you don't have power, you're probably not watching the program this morning. But I received a lot of comments yesterday from people that said they can't watch, but here's a wave anyway. Hopefully they got their power back. Here's a few comments from voters. Well, I hope voters. From viewers as well. Frank, I just thought I could help Kamala with her debate against Vance with the following speech. Hi, I'm Kamala Harris. I'm the current VP of the United States of America. The VP is the person that will take over the duties of the president if he becomes unable to. The duties are very important, so the VP position is very important. I'm currently doing very important work in my preparation to do the very important work of president if I'm called on to do this very important work. And I think I am the best person to be able to do this very important work in the future if our very important country needs me to do this very important work. It's not that far off, Ken. Thank you for the comment. Yeah, they're tough to watch. I know the term word salad gets overused, but I guess it's an appropriate word. Next comment from a different viewer. While I'm not a fan of early voting, I understand the need to do so in this election more than ever. And if this gets someone to vote, so be it. We must not be complacent, and we must vote. A picture ID would end some of the same-day election fears, and why wouldn't anyone want this? That's you know the answer why people don't want it. But, yes, I agree. Picture ID seems like a no-brainer. And, yes, it is important to vote. I'm with you. The importance of early voting is major this year. So if you feel comfortable with it, I would highly recommend it. And I plan on this year early voting. Another comment from a viewer. As reported by the media, the FBI and Secret Service was on enhanced security because of an Iranian assassination plot. How terrible is it that a lone wolf gunman has the ability to make an attempt from 160 yards? That's one of the major concerns. And there's been so many articles, so many pieces on this, of all the failures from outlets of both political persuasions, that this was a dismal failure. Secret Service ramped up security. This coming from CNN. After receiving intel of Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. Now, I want to be very clear here. There is no known connection with Iran to the shooter. So we're not saying that whatsoever. What we're saying is, if this is ramped up security, what would have happened if it wasn't ramped up? U.S. authorities obtained intelligence from a human source in recent weeks on a plot by Iran to try to assassinate Donald Trump, a development that led to the Secret Service increasing security around the former president. There's no indication that Thomas Matthew Crooks, the would-be assassin who attempted to kill the former president on Saturday, was connected to the plot. The existence of the intelligence threat from a hostile foreign intelligence agency and the enhanced security for Trump raises new questions about the security lapses at the rally in Butler. One, as a side note, did you see what Donald Trump Jr. had to say about this this threat from Iran, this Iranian threat to assassinate Donald Trump? Well, Donald Trump Jr. had what you may consider a surprising reaction when asked about the plot from Iran against his father. He said, "It may be the greatest political endorsement ever." I think it's sort of a great endorsement. When people like Iran want to take you out, that probably means it's good for America, bad for Iran. That may be the greatest political endorsement ever. But when that happens, their capabilities are much more than a kid with a rifle. But how does that was just a side note from Don Jr. But how does that plot become known, Secret Service enhanced, and the failures that we've seen through the system? Now, the Secret Service director says that the buck stops with her, but she's not going to resign. Kim Cheadle, that's what it was. Kim Cheadle says, "It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again. The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service, and I need to make sure that we are performing a review and that we are giving resources to our personnel as necessary." Then she made clear that she, quote, would not resign from her role. Now, Republican Florida Representative Corey Mills has floated the idea of what he's calling a J13 committee, styled after the J6 committee, the January 6th committee that the Democrats held. The J13 committee focusing on Democrats' anti-Trump rhetoric in the lead up to the assassination attempt. Look, I think we need to identify the hypocrisy here. Whenever President Trump on January 6th said, quote, "go home peacefully," but he was upset about things. He doesn't have control of what people who are evil or have intent to cause bodily harm, what they do. But yet they ridiculed him, and they still utilize the J6 argument as a way to try and vilify Republicans. But what about other rhetoric that has been said by Maxine Waters? Quote, get in the face of your elected officials. Put a bullseye on Trump. So, proposing a J13 style committee. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk to Marshall Ferrari about the Gus Macker tournament. You won't want to miss that. We do also have quite a few things here about the presidential campaign in general, not just the Republican National Convention. If you watched last night, we've been talking about it all morning long. What were your thoughts? Any takeaways? Any real hits for you that you liked the most? I'd love to hear from you on that. Also, now that you've had a night to sleep on it, what do you think of J.D. Vance? We've heard some great comments so far from viewers who seem very, very supportive of J.D. Vance. We'd like to hear from you on that as well. But as I said, just changing it for just a little bit, we are going to talk with Marshall Ferrari about that fun event coming to Corning this weekend. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hasselson studio, and this is the Stu Ben Senior Services Fund section of our program. I'd like to welcome events manager, Marshall Ferrari.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're the events manager for the Gus Macker tournament, and I understand you were very instrumental in bringing this to Corning. What makes Gus Macker tournament so special to you?
So Gus Macker is something that I remember from when I was growing up in my early teens and late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And just basketball's always been like a big part of our community, both Corning and Elmira. And I just felt it made a lot of sense to come back to Corning and have something for the kids, the young adults, to do for a weekend.
Yes. Could you give us a little history of the tournament?
Yes. So this is actually the 50th year of Gus Macker.
Wow.
The last time it was in the Southern Tier, I believe, was about 20 years ago. So it's been on a hiatus, but it's a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. They travel throughout the country to put on tournaments, New Mexico, Ohio, Michigan, so all over the country, and it's got a really big following, and it's really exciting to have that brand back with us.
You know, it's interesting. I always kind of thought of it as something local. I didn't realize I had that kind of...
Yep, it's national. They're out of Michigan and started. It's biggest in the 90s. And they still do, I believe, 40 tournaments nationwide every year. Wow.
So why did you think that the Gaffer District and Corning specifically would be the perfect place for this?
Just the basketball community and the interest from people. It's something that I've talked about with my friends and people that I know in the community, and I thought that it would get a really great reception, and especially for year one, getting 115 teams for year one, I think that shows that there's a really great support, and it gives us a lot of room to grow in the future too.
Well, that's amazing. So with 115 teams, where do you find the time to pack this all in from July 20th to the 21st?
Yeah, so with the help of Gus Macker and their planning, and then a lot of volunteer help from the community, which has been amazing to have. A lot of key volunteers that are going to come out and help us and make sure that this goes off without a hitch, and that we get 115 teams through here having a great time July 20th and 21st.
So let's say I'm on a team. Okay, and I start that first game. How does it go from there? Let's say I keep winning. Mm-hmm. How many games do you end up being in?
It depends on how big your bracket is.
Oh, okay.
But we have brackets as small as 5 teams and as big as 15 teams, I believe, is our biggest one. So we'll be jamming out Saturday till about 5 o'clock, and then Sunday we'll probably be there till about 3.
And you mentioned volunteers.
Yes.
And we know volunteers are very important. How many volunteers do you think it takes to put together? I don't need a specific number, but
sure.
to get to something like this.
We probably, 50 to 75 volunteers.
Wow, that's wonderful.
We've had a committee that's been meeting almost monthly with key people where, refs or, volunteer sponsorship. It's been a very community-focused group that's been leading this, and it's been great to have everybody's support on it. And
you mentioned this has kind of been a dream of yours. How long have you been working on this personally?
I've been lobbying, pitching, talking to Gus Macker for 2 years now.
Wow, good for you.
Trying to get it back, so it's been great to see it actually come to fruition.
Now, we were talking earlier about brackets, and for some people that may not be aware, have never heard of Gus Macker tournament, what are the brackets? You don't have to go through every one, but what are we looking at if we're a spectator? What does the bracket look like?
So it's sliced up by age group mostly.
Okay.
So there'll be like top men's, there'll be 17 to 18 boys, 17 to 18 girls, and kind of sliced up in that, and there'll be a big bracket sheet that you'll be able to see, so you can go over, check it out, and see, they're playing the championship game over there. Let's go check that out.
What's the youngest?
There is down to 10U.
Wow.
10 and under.
Wow, that's cool. So there you go. And you said 115 teams. That's so amazing. Let's say I've never been to one of these before. It is spectator friendly.
Yes. Yep. Totally.
What should a spectator know if they're thinking about going?
There will be, Gus Macker merch. There will be just great basketball going on. The focus is the basketball in the community. There will be some food vendors and stuff there as well. So just it's as well as face painting too. There will be face painting for the kids, totally free of charge. So yeah, it's just a great time to come out and check out if you're into basketball, if you're a basketball junkie.
Yeah. So if you're on one of the teams and you end up being the champion of your bracket, what do you get?
You get a Gus Macker trophy. So it's a basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball person holding up a basketball.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's a lot of basketball.
Yeah.
This is very basketball friendly.
Yes, it is.
That's funny. So where is the location for people curious?
So this will all be taking place at Corning Credit Union over off of Pulteney Street. So 1 Credit Union Plaza, I believe, is the address. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be all over there in their parking lot, contained in there. So feel free to come out, check it out. It'll be a great time. How
many courts can you fit in there?
We are having 15 courts.
Wow.
Yep, 15 courts will be in there.
Jeez. So we're talking about the Gus Macker tournament. It is July 20th through the 21st. Where can people find out more?
You want to check out gafferdistrict.com as well as Gaffer District on all socials.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, you can't play. You're over 18. So you're just doing this for the love of the game, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. But it is too late to register, just so people know.
Yep, registration.
So it's spectators at this point, but it sounds like it's going to just be a fun event and something to start back the tradition here.
Yes.
Including, hopefully, it's an every year thing.
Yes, it will be an every year thing. Also, we part of our partnership and part of that committee has been with Elmira Downtown Development.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So next year, look for this to be going on in downtown Elmira, and then the plan is to rotate between Corning and Elmira going forward for the rest of us doing this.
Oh, that's a good idea. And this is something I didn't really think of until you said that. It's not just Corning teams, right?
No.
Any idea where the farthest away?
I believe I was told there's a team from Buffalo coming down.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so really exciting.
It's the reputation of the Gus Macker tournament.
Yep, so it's really exciting to see that.
So next year they have in Elmira, but this year it's in Corning, July 20th through the 21st. Marshall, best of luck with this.
Thank you.
Congratulations for your dream coming true.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly. And we are back with Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much to Marshall Ferrari for being on the program this morning. A couple comments from viewers. I'm really looking forward to the debate between Vance and Harris. Vance has a talent for spinning the Democrat slams back in their face. Yes, she did say, I look forward to, I guess in that call to Vance to congratulate him, she said, I look forward to meeting you at the debate, something like that. I'm thinking Vance is more of a clone of Ronald Reagan. Well, thank you for the comments. Keep them coming in. We were talking about, well, before we move on to that topic, I just want to mention something very, very quickly. 2 things. One, if you are part of a business, maybe you own a business, and you want to help out the Salvation Army of Corning struggling after the cattle campaign at Christmas, not reaching the amount. Well, I mean, you've seen so many charities in this economy struggle. And Salvation Army does so good throughout the year. They're having basically a Christmas in July kettle campaign where if you are a part of a business, restaurant, something like that, and you want one of these small kettle tabletop models, about like that, just like a big pot, basically. If you would like one and you can compete with your co-workers, compete with a different business, or just collect and help, give the Salvation Army of Corning a call. The challenge is from July 22nd through the 27th, and it is Christmas in July campaign. So here's the phone number. Ready? 607-216-4099. 607-216-4099. And if you missed it or if you have any questions, go ahead and get a hold of me at that number on the bottom of the screen. I'll get you in line with the right people because as we talk about so often on this program, it's important to help our community. And boy, Salvation Army helps our community. Okay. Oh, another comment from a viewer. Vance has the charisma of Ronald Reagan and the attitude of Trump. The perfect blend. Thank you. Keep those comments coming in. Lee Zeldin, who I think Lee Zeldin was actually on the short list for a while for VP. You recall his run for governor and former congressman here in New York. He was talking about the assassination attempt, and he said the rhetoric has gotten so bad between, yes, the bullseye comment. Remember Dan Goldman making a comment about how President Trump needs to be eliminated. Benny Thompson wants to take away Secret Service protection. One of Thompson's aides was just complaining that the shooter had missed President Trump. I didn't realize Benny Thompson wanted to take Secret Service away at one time. Wow. I'm tired of seeing Republicans attack like this, Zeldin said. I saw it with Steve Scalise with the shooting a few years ago, the attack on Rand Paul, the targeting of Justice Kavanaugh, this very close, near assassination of President Trump. Yes, we should settle our scores at the ballot box. I agree with that. It's a truth. It's something that everyone should preach and everyone should believe in. Ultimately, we have to confront head-on the fact that there is a very extensive effort basically throwing everything that they can against President Trump outside of the ballot box to try to prevent him from taking office. It's gone too far. It's sick, and it needs to end. Again, if you're just joining us, former congressman, former gubernatorial candidate here in New York, Lee Zeldin. He said, Zeldin said that 3 days after Trump announced his run for re-election in 2022, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced Jack Smith as special counsel to prosecute Trump, while Georgia prosecutor Nathan Wade was sitting inside the White House. You know all about that. That was all 9 days after President Biden said that we would have to pursue ways outside of the ballot box to take down President Trump. I'm not going to just sign up for the fact that it's all just a coincidence. Every normal, common sense, average, everyday American is able to see through it. Let's truly focus on settling the score at the ballot box. Let's not have to focus on crazy criminal cases and trying to bankrupt the president and all these other attempts that threaten safety. So that's Lee Zeldin. I thought you'd want to hear from him. I know a lot of Zeldin fans out there. But did you see talk about, and I guess, I don't know, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Biden White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield put her foot in her mouth. I am going to give her the benefit of the doubt. This was embarrassing. She urged Democrats to, quote, turn their fire on former President Trump less than 72 hours after he was nearly felled by an assassin's bullet. Quote, Biden has said many, many times, after having been questioned many, many times about this, that he's not stepping down and that he is going to be the nominee. So at some point, Democrats have to decide that they want to try to win this election and turn their fire on Donald Trump. So this was in reference, and we're going to actually talk about that, the attacks on Biden. If I were a Biden supporter, I'd be upset. I'd be saying, why don't you go after Trump? Why are you focused inter-party fighting? But she should not have used that phrase, needless to say. Her tone-deaf choice of words came as she was speaking on a panel on CNN. She immediately, at least, seemed to realize her error, pausing momentarily before apologizing for her poor choice of words. Quote, I shouldn't have said turn their fire. I apologize. That's not the phrase that I meant. They need to turn their focus on Donald Trump. This is maybe one of the reasons why Scarborough was canceled on Monday. Afraid people would make. Well, you can't use this same kind of rhetoric. It just proves the point that the same type of vitriolic rhetoric has been used over and over again by this campaign. So it's not easy to give up those terms when it's necessary. It just proves the point of what we've been saying. This has been a long campaign to paint Trump as a dictator, needs to be taken out, phrases like that used. Now, where was it? Oh, there it goes. Piers Morgan on the New York Post wrote a piece called Bullseye Biden. He should admit his violent talk is partly why Trump got shot. This is Piers Morgan. It was extraordinarily insightful to watch Biden, this was during Lester Holt, working so hard to deflect any attention to his own culpability in raising the political temperature to such dangerous levels that someone would try to assassinate his rival 4 months before the election. When asked for his first reaction to the shooting, Biden instantly went on his favorite Trump-bashing greatest hits. January 6th, Charlottesville, Nazis, both sides, etc. Think about that for a moment. Here's the President of the United States declining to even pretend to care that his immediate predecessor and current rival for the forthcoming election just came within an inch of being killed. And then he goes on to talk more about this speech. And he said, when your side has spent 8 years screaming that Trump is the new Adolf Hitler and incessantly, hysterically branding him a fascist and dictator and tyrant and just about every other ludicrously exaggerated offensive label that they can hurl at him, if you call someone that kind of thing often enough and repeatedly state they represent a clear and present danger to the country, eventually someone is going to act on it. We don't yet know the shooter's motives, but we do know he wanted Trump dead. And we also know that many so-called tolerant left-wingers on social media disgustingly expressed their dismay that he wasn't successful or insisting the shooting was staged. When it comes to Trump, all liberal rhetorical bets have been off limits for a long time, which is ironic given that the biggest problem most of his critics on the left have with him is his own incendiary rhetorical language and the way he speaks about people. Not that they would ever admit that they are part of the problem. So it's a pretty interesting piece by Piers Morgan. And he says, as with the rest of the interview, which just confirmed what the debate debacle established, that Biden is now so cognitively impaired he cannot possibly serve another 4 years in office. But neither should he be allowed to evade accountability for his role in inflaming tensions. The Democrats announced, following the assassination attempt, that they were suspending a hateful $50 million advertising campaign against Trump. But it won't be long before they're back calling him a Hitler-esque monster who must be stopped because they can't help themselves. Hence the reason, going back to what I was just talking about with the ex-Biden staffer, White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield, saying turn their fire. You can't get out of that habit, but I'll continue. Biden will be leading the charge because that's the only way he knows how to compete against Trump. If the president really wants to dial down the temperature, he should start by admitting his own appalling contribution to it and properly atone for the damage it's done. That's Piers Morgan, who I'm not typically a fan of, doing a good job. Now, James Bovard, how am I doing on time? James Bovard suggesting that, and I'll pose this question to you as well, saying we can't trust politicized FBI to handle the probe of the Trump assassination bid. President Biden on Sunday announced an FBI investigation, and it would be thorough and swift. But it's folly to trust a federal law enforcement agency to obliterate interagency niceties by exposing all the foibles and flubs of fellow G-men. Instead, we'll likely see a vintage D.C. investigation along these lines. Please tell us if you screwed up. Also, is there someone else we can blame? Congress is jumping in on the Secret Service's Butler debacle, asserting its own right to investigate. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer has directed Secret Service Chief Kimberly Cheadle to preserve all documents tied to the Trump shooting, and Cheadle could take a high-profile hammering before Comer's committee next week. Meanwhile, Representative Vance Gooden, citing a lack of faith in the current FBI leadership, is calling for a select House committee to look into the Secret Service's mess, joined by Representative Jim Banks. Rand Paul, Gary Peters announced plans for a bipartisan Senate investigation. Yet the White House is telling Americans to blindly trust an agency whose acronym is now widely presumed to stand for following Biden's instructions. This is the same FBI that kowtowed when Team Biden wanted parents who protested school closures and mask mandates at school board meetings to be characterized as terrorist threats. And we can go through all that. We know how they looked into Catholic organizations as well. The agency early on knew that Hunter Biden's laptop was bona fide, but did nothing to debunk the claim that were being made. They go through the whole history by James Bovard here at the New York Post if you have a moment. So Team Biden will stonewall a congressional subpoena for clearly political reasons. What might they suppress regarding the assassination attempt on Trump? If Biden's rhetoric dubbing Trump a neo-Hitler influenced Secret Service decisions on the level of protection that Republicans deserved, for example, don't expect the FBI to reveal it. So congressional investigations and whistleblower leaks are the best chance to get to the truth of the matter between now and November 5th. Our political system has zero legitimacy to spare these days. Biden said Sunday that nothing is more important than unity right now, but a facade of unity is no substitute for the truth. All right, we're going to have to start wrapping things up. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back. Looking a little ominous over there in the distance on historic Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I just saw this come across the breaking news, not really, but news. Hillbilly Elegy. J.D. Vance's book topped Amazon's bestsellers list one day after he was tapped to be VP. You had to assume that. I wonder what the Netflix ratings are. I understand there was a movie made about it. I have not seen it, though I am going to see it. Now, Biden teases, you may have heard this yesterday, New York Post reporting it, he was giving a speech at the NAACP's annual convention. And he was talking about Kamala Harris. And he said, she's not only a great vice president, she could be president of the United States. Now, is that a hint towards you're thinking of retiring? What could it mean? Biden gave no indication, however, that he would retire, telling the crowd that he had a plan for the first 100 days of a second term, including signing voting rights legislation come hell or high water, he said. The incumbent repeatedly attacked Trump in his remarks, despite calling on Americans to lower the temperature of the campaign in that rare Oval Office address. Biden exclaimed at one point, Donald Trump's presidency was hell for Black America. And then why does he cuss so much? Yeah, he says that word numerous times. Anyway, I don't want to go through. Why am I going through all this? I could give you the whole speech. There's a lot of questionable things said in that speech. But now the DNC, not the RNC, the DNC is aiming to push Biden toward nomination as soon as next week, folks, to kind of stop the speculation, to just, I guess, move forward. And it's really kind of Biden holdouts or Biden flunkies that are pushing this. Leaders of the Democratic National Committee are moving swiftly to confirm President Biden as his party's presidential nominee by the end of July. That's according to 4 people briefed on the matter. The move would formalize Mr. Biden as a nominee at a moment when Democrats are torn over whether he should run after that debate performance. Since May, he has been set to be confirmed through a virtual roll call weeks before the Democratic National Convention in August. And that was some legal reason to keep him on the ballot or put him on the ballot somewhere. And I can't remember where it was. But as Mr. Biden faces persistent doubts from within his party, some delegates involved with the behind-the-scenes bureaucratic process are eager to end the public conversations about his future. Not everyone agrees. Its previously unreported move, a group of House Democrats who question whether he should forge ahead, is trying to rally support for changing the nominating path to allow for potential challengers at the convention, kind of an open convention. Donors and prominent strategists have floated ideas that would open the door to other candidates, but party insiders have dismissed this proposal as fanciful. Yeah, that would be, we want to talk about chaos, the mess that would cause, the confusion that would cause, all with just 4 months to go, less than 4 months to go. My goodness. And again, the Democratic Party voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden to be their nominee. So who's these party insiders to say it should be anybody but him, to all of a sudden open the process to new people? But there is a rebellion. According to Axios, some lawmakers are uneasy about the Democratic National Committee's plan to forge ahead with a virtual roll call to nominate Biden before the convention. People are back to being angry at Biden, and a push to sign on to this letter is going around. The Replace Biden movement is back, a House Democrat told Axios. We heard earlier in the week that the talks had kind of went away, that Democrats have kind of accepted their fate. Not anymore. A letter circulating among congressional Democrats argues that there is no legal justification for an early virtual roll call after Ohio moved its filing deadline past the date of the Democratic convention. We respectfully, but empathetically, request that you can cancel any plans for an accelerated virtual roll call and further refrain from any extraordinary procedures that could be perceived as curtailing legitimate debate, said the letter. The DNC moved towards a virtual vote before the debate in response to Ohio threatening to not put Biden on the ballot because the party's convention was after the deadline. Ohio changed the rule, but the DNC has pushed forward, arguing that the legislature could, in theory, reverse itself. The suggestion that the timeline for the virtual roll call has been accelerated is false, said the chair, Jamie Harrison. The timeline for the virtual roll call process remains on schedule and unchanged from when the DNC made the decision in May. Representatives Susan Wild, Mike Quigley, and Pat Ryan told Axios they plan to sign on to the letter. Mike Levin, who told Biden he should drop out during a call with Hispanic caucus members on Friday, will sign the letter as well. The list goes on and on. That's going to be interesting, folks. It's not over. The talks are back. A growing faction of Democrats revolt says CNN. We'll talk about it when we come back and wrap things up. It's hard to believe how quickly this show went, as always. Get your last-minute comments in so I can read them before we wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Oh, look how the rain come down. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Okay, comment from a viewer. J.D. Vance was not on my radar for VP, so I really know little about him other than I think his age played a big factor in the choice. I think so too, but I think it's a smart factor. I think it's a good thing to have quote-unquote new blood in there at a time when so much focus has been on age in this race. But I'll continue with what the viewer had to say. Little skeptical knowing that there was a movie made about him. Full disclosure, I'm not a fan of Hollywood in any way, shape, or form. I couldn't agree more about Hollywood. The movie was made for Netflix is what I understand, and I know very little about the movie, so I can't say one way or the other. I understand your concern, but it was based on his book, of course, and his book was a big bestseller. So, but I'm with you with Hollywood. I couldn't agree more. So I can understand your concern over that. Growing faction of Democrats revolt against Biden's upcoming virtual nomination. Even CNN's reporting on it, but CNN's actually been going pretty anti-Biden now for a while. They don't want Biden to be to be the presidential candidate, excuse me. But they also don't, they can't stand Trump. So at the end of the day, if Biden says I'm staying in it, they're going to go back all in for Biden. Right now, they're just hoping there's a window there to get somebody else in because they see what could be real trouble for Democrats this November. Adam Schiff, affectionately known as Pencil Neck by the former president, wasn't that his nickname? U.S. Representative Adam Schiff, a California Democrat who was running for the Senate, warned donors in a private meeting that his party was likely to suffer major losses if Biden continued his re-election campaign. And this is coming from two unnamed sources, is unnamed sources. But he said, I think if he is our nominee, I think we lose. And we may very, very, very well lose the Senate and lose our chance to take back the House. Yeah, he would say that behind closed doors. Not, of course. We would not stand by his convictions to say it out in the open. There's an interesting piece we will not have time to get to. But it's by Adam Brodsky from the New York Post. And he says Biden's loss of Jewish support could cost Democrats the presidency and more. And he goes through and names all the things Biden has done to hurt the Jewish community, to hurt our ally, excuse me. I always rush at the end and start getting tongue-tied. Our ally, Israel. But it wraps up with this. If Biden remains a Democratic nominee in November, we'll find out just how steep a price Jews will make him pay for all of that. And that was a laundry list. Yes, it was Netflix. Okay, so this viewer wrote, Netflix, now I'm even more nervous. That's actually a very fair point. I hadn't thought of it that way. Yes, Hollywood and Netflix both questionable. I don't know the history of when it came out. I know nothing more about it. So just so you know. I mentioned earlier, and we don't have a time to get to this, but Kristen Flemings writes about why it was important to have Amber Rose speak at the RNC when some people thought it was controversial. Some conservatives did not want her to speak because of her history, of her background. The right is not without its problems, she writes. There's a reason why being politically homeless is a widespread phenomenon. There are votes up for grabs, and if the Republicans want to win, they need to continue to broaden the base. And Rose, believe it or not, did an effective job of moving that tent pole last night. All right, that is it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Marshall Ferrari for being our guest this morning. I really appreciate it. Telling us all about that exciting tournament, the Gus Macker tournament. Appreciate him joining us. On tomorrow's show, we're going to get a nice interview with Sylvia, a nice update from how things have been going since she was an international exchange student here in America. Now she's back home in Italy, and she was right around high school graduation, college. We're going to find out all about it. We don't know. So she'll be joining us tomorrow on the program. We've got other special guests throughout the week. I will let you know on tomorrow's show. It's going to be a busy week, as you can tell. guests, and all the important news that you need to know. So tune in every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.